guys, it's Tina, and I'm going to talk about The Way of Kings. This is going to be pretty much a spoil-free book talk. Although there is going to be some little spoilers because there's stuff that happens at the beginning of the book that some people may consider spoilers, but I kind of have to talk about it because it kind of sets up the story and the way everything starts. If you are one of those people that are really sensitive to spoilers, maybe peace out. The Way of Kings is the first book in a to-be 10-book series. There is 3 books out now. The 4th book is coming out November 17th, which is Rhythm of War. So I decided to start the series now in preparation for the 4th book coming out. One of the probably things you're going to notice is it's a chunker. It's over 1,000 pages in story. It has 1,007 pages total, but the last couple of pages is like definitions and stuff. So that's not actual story. So it's a big feat to take on. The way I read this book was I listened to the audiobook and read it at the same time. I thought that would be the easiest but fastest way I could process the information and absorb all of it because I want to get it done before November. If you are a little nervous about taking on a 1,000-page book, that might be a way that you can consume it and retain a whole bunch of information. Listen to the audiobook while actually physically reading it at the same time. Okay, so chapter 1, the king of Elfgar is assassinated, and the Parshendi people take responsibility for this assassination. That's put into motion a war against the Parshendi to avenge the king's death. That sets the stage of the foundation of what this story basically is about, with most of our characters. We follow Kaladin, which at the beginning of the story is fighting in a war for one of the high princes. He then is transferred and marked with a slave's mark, and then we see him travel along in this journey as a slave to become a bridgeman in the battlefields in the war against the Parshendi people. The bridgemen are lowest of the low. They are treated like they are very expendable because they are considered extremely expendable. Kaladin was put into this group of Bridge 4, which was considered extremely unlucky. So his storyline gets very dark and depressing. And for a long time in a storyline, you feel like it's not really moving anywhere. It's just a constant dark and depressing mood, and you don't get really pulled out of this feeling. So it kind of feels like it is really intense at the beginning, and then it drops down low, and then it's just kind of stagnant, but you get a payoff. Then we follow Daladar, who is a high prince and the brother to the king who was assassinated and the uncle to the current king who became king because his father was assassinated. He was a badass warrior in his prime. He was known as the Blackhorn. He has a huge, dangerous reputation as a warrior. So he has a lot of high respects. But there's starting to be rumors around the camp of the battlefield that he's kind of losing it. He's losing his touch. He's losing his edge. He's losing his warriorness. And he's turning into a agreeable, soft, not as revengeful leader. And that starts to cause trouble between the noble people and the government system that they have, which they have the king and then the 10 high princes, and Dalinar is one of the 10 high princes. That starts to cause trouble with this war and how they are moving towards and trying to defeat the Parshendi people. Then we have Shallan. For the longest time, she seemed not even connected to the other two in the storyline of this war. But she is a noble girl that her family has catastrophic circumstances to where she basically follows Yesna and tries to catch up with this scholar Yesna to become her ward and change her family's life and not be in dire situations as she is. But that's kind of what this book is about. There is a huge fantastical world. There is a huge fantastical magic system. I honestly don't understand all of the magic system yet, but I don't think I'm meant to at the end of this book. This world has everything its own. It has its own creatures. It has its own culture. Obviously, it has its own government noble system. It has these things called Sprin, which are kind of like sprites, fairy things that float around. There's literally Sprin for like everything. There's Sprin for pain. There's Sprin for rot. There's Sprin for angry Sprin. I think there's happy Sprin. Or there's love Sprin, or there's Sprin for everything. And one of the Sprin kind of attaches herself to Kaladin and becomes like his unwanted buddy in order to try to pull him out of this damage, depression that he's going through towards the beginning of this book. She also provides a little comic relief to the chapters where Kaladin is just completely depressed and feels like he's lower than low. So that is the world building that goes on in this book. There's so much more, but the world was amazing, but that's not what grabbed me. It wasn't the world building or the magic system, which were good. It was literally the characters in this book. What I liked about the characters and how they were written is all of them were morally gray. Like, all of them had good and bad. There was no like shining light, definite hero who never did anything wrong and always did the right thing and never struggled with anything. These characters, all of them struggled with a whole bunch of stuff. And it was really captivating to read about. It seemed that every time you thought that Kaladin was going to make his situation even remotely livable, or he brought himself up even slightly above the depressed mode of his situation, someone would kick him down lower than he was before. And how he dealt with that and everything that happened with that kept me turning the pages. Like, I honestly, for parts of the book, didn't think he was gonna make it to the next chapter because he just got kicked down and kicked down and kicked down. Dalinar and his struggles with the badass warrior that he was and who he is becoming, or who he wants to be, who he thinks he should be in this war, in this situation. What is right, what's wrong, didn't captivate me as much until towards the end of the book. Part of the reasons why he was starting to lose his edge is because he would have these crazy, vicious dreams every time a storm came, and it would pull him into these visions of, he didn't know if it was the past, the future, or whatever, but he felt like the dreams were supposed to be telling him something about who he's supposed to be, or even if they're really real, or if he's literally just losing his mind. So at first wasn't as captivating as Kaladin's story, but towards the end of the book, I appreciated his storyline more. Shallan was honestly my least favorite to follow, but what I loved about Shallan's storyline was she literally had no brain to mouth filter. She tried, but it didn't work. And the witty stuff that came out of her mouth, the sarcasm that this dialogue had, was just amazing. I really enjoyed when we got to that part where she was interacting with other characters that much to where this was happening on a regular basis. And the ending of her storyline was a twist that I honestly did not see coming whatsoever. So that was hugely entertaining to me, because I was kind of like I was kind of like asleep for her storyline, and then that came and I was like, wait, what? What's going on? that was pretty cool. I enjoyed all of that. I am really invested in these characters to the point where I'm kind of not paying attention to the world building and the magic system as much as I normally would in a book. Normally, like magic systems, that's where I geek out, is magic systems. I love to get into and figure out the intricate happenings of these magic systems. But with this one, it is not what's bringing me into the story. In my opinion, this story is a very character-driven story. That is what has caught my attention fully in this book. I am super excited to start the next book and see what happens. I was hugely satisfied with the ending, but I could totally see trouble in the next book with how this ends. And I'm super excited to get that. Like I said before, warning, when you're reading this book, if you haven't read this book, it slopes down. Like you have a huge, intense first of the book, and then it slopes down and it kind of seems like it's not moving. But you need to pay attention because the payoff is so great. I remember when I was getting to, I think, the beginning of part 2, and I didn't pay attention well enough to put all the characters and how they connected together. So I actually had to ask a friend of mine on Discord. I'll link Greg below. He was a pal. I asked him on Discord. I was like, wait, what's going on here? And he helped me out there. So that was great. So it's pretty digestible to read for an epic fantasy. Go ahead and try it. Okay, I believe that is all I have for this book talk. It's really hard to talk about a book, in my opinion, without spoiling it. But I tried. Let's see how it works. Okay, subscribe, click all the things below. Okay, bye. That's a pretty crappy summary of the book, but I'm not very good at summarizing books. I haven't gotten to that point where I could literally do it effortlessly like some booktubers can, but I'm trying, and eventually I'll get there.